Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep. And I am also here to help you connect with your angels and open to the magic in your soul. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes. You can learn more about my services and offerings at my website, illuminatingsouls.com. But for now, I am here to help you fall asleep. And it's not just me, but a beautiful team of angels that are gathering together in this moment to bring you love. So I invite you to get comfortable and cozy on in. My hope is you have a nice, soft, warm bed to sleep in. And if for some reason you do not, I hope you have found a safe and quiet place where you can get a good expanse of rest. So I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and out. And with your permission, the angels will infuse the space you are in with a soft pink light that will help your body and mind relax. As I've shared with you before, for the past several years, I have been using sleep podcasts to help me fall asleep too. And they have become such an essential part of my well-being that I was guided to create this podcast for you. And so here we are. One of the things I am guided to share with you tonight is, as I'm recording this, there is a lot happening in the world, and I'm purposefully not speaking of specifics. I know you know what I'm talking about, but this is a sleep podcast, and this isn't necessarily the space for talking about things that are happening on the world stage. But I do want to share with you a message the angels brought forward for me yesterday. I'm facilitating a beautiful group of other soul-inspired practitioners. It's a group for connecting with the soul of your business, because that's one of the ways that I run my company. And the angels had us ask the question, what do your people need to know right now? How can you support your people? How can you love your people? And I listened. And this is what they brought forward. They said, help normalize what people are feeling right now. And here's what they mean by that. In the spiritual, metaphysical world, we love to lean into teachings that sometimes can encourage a space of spiritual bypass. You know, the ones that I'm talking about. Everything happens for a reason. Everything will work out. your thoughts create your reality. And I'm not mocking those beliefs, but I also believe those beliefs can get weaponized against people and against ourselves. So right now there are profound events taking place in the world. And I think anyone with a heart who feels in their heart is feeling this. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or afraid, if you're feeling anxious or you can't focus, if you feel jittery or on edge, don't feel as if you're doing something wrong. And please don't perceive that if you were more spiritually evolved, this wouldn't be upsetting you. Let's normalize how we're feeling right now. And I'm not saying that if you're not feeling these things, you're doing something wrong. I think the point I'm trying to make is let's not go to polarities here. Each of us has our own curriculum we're navigating. The events that happen in life land for each of us uniquely. So I just want you to know if you are feeling deeply, if you're having a hard time focusing, it's okay. You're not alone in this. You know, one of the things I find so fascinating is the study of our physiology. That when stressful events happen for some of us, we can get flooded hormonally or with neurotransmitters. I'm not a doctor, so forgive me if I am not speaking of this properly. I had I did one of those genetic tests several years ago, and I uploaded my information to another site that gives you more insight as to genetics. And I was looking through my report and I found this one section, and it said, "You are a worrier." And I thought, well, I know that, but how do you know that, right? Like, how would that show up in genetics? And it turns out there is a very, very common mutation that 25% of the population has, that when dopamine gets stored in the prefrontal cortex, there is an enzyme that is supposed to burn off the dopamine. And in 25% of the population, it does not burn it off effectively. So we get a buildup of dopamine, and that can lead to overwhelm and worry and anxiety. I thought this was fascinating. I've always said I come from a long line of worriers, and I now think I really do genetically, right? The other side of it is for people who their systems burn off the dopamine too quickly. They are the warriors. They are the risk takers, right? They're the ones who want to go paragliding off of buildings and look for the next rush of adventure. I share this with you now because I don't know where you fit in that continuum. I'm not trying to diagnose anyone, but it gave me an access point to be able to understand what happens to me when something significant or stressful happens. I can now feel how I get flooded, and it takes me some time to rebalance. I don't see this as a problem or a weakness. I actually think it's one of my gifts that I am able to feel so deeply. It makes me a wonderful empath and intuitive. It allows me to bring others into my heart and feel with them and love them and hold their hand and be with them. And I have many, many ways that I take good care of myself when this happens. But I mention it because I can feel the echo or the waves of energy that my beingness has been processing the past week. And I would imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you are too, in your own way. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means you are one who holds humanity in your heart. And it may take a little while to get balanced. And for me, I turn to my self-care. And I don't mean to make it sound like I meditate for hours. Sometimes self-care is watching television and getting lost in a good binge. It doesn't have to be really high vibrational spiritual work. I've been going for more walks outside. I've been listening to audiobooks. I've been teaching my classes because my work is one of the ways I come into the healing light. Just as an aside, for anyone who thinks they ever may want to do this work, or if you already do it, it is such a blessing, because when I do this work, I call in the light and I call in the angels. This isn't my personal energy. This is the energy of divine love flowing through. And it blesses me when it does. And so then I get to bless you. And we get to be together under this canopy of stars and light and love. Because as it flows through for me, it flows through for you, and it grows exponentially. It's one of the things I love so much about the invitation of this podcast. We have people around the world listening. And so whenever you listen, whatever time and space you listen, you are a part of the tapestry of light here. So interesting, just as I said that, I heard the birds caw in the sky. They're like, we're here too. We're helping. Mother Nature is with you. So take a deep breath in, and please let the love come to you. You are precious in all the world, and the angels and I are here to help you really feel into that. So I'm going to call in the angels now. They're already here, but I love to intentionally call them in so that you know they're here too. So you get cozy and take some nice deep breaths in and out. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to be here now. Please help us know you are here, that we can gather with you in the heart of God and receive healing and light and peace of heart. And angels, we ask that you ripple this prayer of peace and love around the world, so that all who are seeking comfort may find it in whatever way will be meaningful to them. Angels, we ask that you help clear and balance our energy fields so that we can get a good expansive rest. Help clearing away anything that does not belong to us. Any old fragmented energy that we no longer need to hold on to. And angels, help to illuminate our path forward. I know that each of the beloveds listening to this message is a gift from on high. That each of you, that you are a blessing of light in this world. And I know you may not always know this about yourself, but you're magical. There's always been something about you, a spark within you. You have always been one who sees the world uniquely. And I'm grateful for the visions that you are holding for brighter tomorrows, even when things feel not so bright. And angels, we receive your prayers as you receive ours. And dear ones, just open your heart to receive prayers of love from your angels. Your angels hold you with such a deep sense of reverence and compassion. They are aware of your journey. They are aware of what you are experiencing. And your angels will never criticize you or shame you or grow impatient with you. They will always, always meet you with profound compassion and understanding, and of course love, and also a good sense of humor too. So take a breath in and let the love come to you. And the angels want you to know that you can rest now, that you have done what needed to be done in this day, and that while you sleep, they will watch over you. The angels also invite you to bring your prayers into this sacred circle now, and to not worry if your prayers seem trite or not enough. You can pray for yourself. It's okay. It is not seen as selfish. And I say that because I know that there is no one in our listening circle who needs to be invited to pray for others. I know you pray for others all the time. So whether your prayers are for yourself or your loved ones or for the world at large, or for the rainforest, or for the whales in the ocean, we invite you to bring your prayers into your heart so that the angels can receive them from you. And as you do, your prayers are amplified exponentially. Remember, wherever two or more are gathered in God's name, miracles happen. And right now, I am here, and you are here, and the angels are here. We officially have a sacred circle, and feel the light coming to you. It is always such a blessing when our burdens can get lifted from us and we can breathe, even if it's just for a little while. You are a beautiful and creative and vibrant spirit. And the angels invite you to remember that about yourself. And my wish for you is as you sleep, the angels will help you connect with sparks of inspiration and creativity that will support you in the days to come. And for good measure, let's bring in a gorgeous wave of forgiveness across all time and space. You know, one of the things I love about this work is we don't always need to know what's up for healing or forgiveness. we can just wash a blanket of healing and forgiveness across time and space. It's like, God, you know what's up for healing and forgiveness. Let's just wash it all out right now to bring forgiveness and healing into our hearts and our minds and our souls and our bodies. Taking a deep breath in and out, letting your body let go. Letting your body know that it's okay to let go and relax and rest. And while you do, I'm going to tell you a story. And tonight I'm going to do something a little different. We're going to do a little bit of story time. I'm just pausing because I'm waiting for the angels to come in, and I just said a little prayer like, help me fill the next 40 minutes so it's not just 40 minutes of me going and although I would imagine that would be utterly boring and help you fall asleep. But I want to read a tweet to you that is what is inspiring our story time today. It's a little bit of a wander down memory lane, and it has to do with food. This is the thread. It is based on a tweet from Jamie Lauren Kalish, who is a writer for New York Magazine. And they wrote this in September of 2019. And I'm going to put the tweet in the show notes because it is a phenomenal thread and worthy of reading in the morning. Every Jewish American family recipe seems like a precious heirloom from the old country. And then you finally get your hands on the recipe, and it's like, mix diet black cherry soda with French dressing and cook the chicken in it for 6 hours. And this so sums up Jewish American cookery of the 60s and 70s. This is the story of my people and of my life. And even if you're not Jewish, I'm sure that Italian grandmas and Irish grandmas and Indian grandmas and like all of our, grandparents, wherever you live in the world, had their own version of this, because when packaged goods became a thing at the end of the 1800s and the early 1900s, it really revolutionized cooking. All of a sudden you could get a can of string beans anytime. Not everywhere in the world, of course, but I mean in much of the Western world that was true. And it changed the way people cooked. And so this led me down a rabbit hole, and I have been, for the past few months, collecting cookbooks that Jewish sisterhoods would put together. So, and I'm sure there's a version of this in the Catholic sisterhoods or whatever they would have been called, or the PTAs, or, the Job's Daughters, or whatever the organizations were. Yes, that, I think it was a really big thing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s for a community of mostly women, I would assume, to put together these cookbooks, and everybody would contribute a recipe, and then they would sell them as a fundraiser. And I also should probably share with you that I am someone who is deeply imprinted with food. That will come as no shock to any of you who know me. I have always had a profound affinity for food. Almost every life memory that I have is associated with some kind of food. I can tell you what I ate at that moment. My mom used to say when I was really young, about 3 years old, that I would scream if I didn't get the biggest apple in the bowl. And I was like, that sounds like me. That sounds about right. And I often joke that when I was contemplating this incarnation and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to Earth again, someone said, they're going to have cake. There'll be cake. And I said, oh, cake. Okay, I'll go. And, I recognize that not everyone is a foodie, which is so hard to believe. I'm just going to be rambling here, so this may not follow a straight line, but I'm going to ramble just so you know. So I know that I'm a foodie, and what shocked me was to learn that not everybody is. And so this is, I guess, one of the rambling aside stories I'm going to share with you. I have a love affair with Anderson Cooper. Like, I love Anderson Cooper. And I fell in love with him. Of course, not romantic love. We know that, yes. I just mean I love him. He's awesome. And it must have been the late 90s or early 2000s when there was a string of hurricanes here in the U.S. And Anderson Cooper was kind of in his early days at CNN. And he always had the assignment of being the guy who was outside in the wind, who would lean against the wind to show you how destructive it was. And I fell in love with him then. I was like, I love this guy. I'm going to watch everything he does. So he was the hurricane guy for a long time. And I don't know, several years ago, he had a daytime talk show that was more of a lifestyle show, so not a hard-hitting news show. And he's delightful. Like, he giggles, he's funny, he's okay, anyways, I will stop my soliloquy about Anderson Cooper because there's a reason I'm telling you about this that has to do with food. I promise you all of this is going to weave together in the end. So, one thing he shared on his show was that he is a picky eater, and picky eater does not even begin to describe his relationship with food. He said, I hate eating. I wish I didn't have to eat. I find eating to be a burden. And he has all these friends who have tried to do interventions and get him to try different foods, and he's not interested. He says, I can eat the exact same thing every day for a year and it doesn't bother me. And which I am absolutely fascinated by because I live for food. And so they had a food psychologist on, something like that, food psychologist, psychiatrist, some medical practitioner who had studied this. And what she said is that people taste differently. There's a bell curve, and some people are super tasters, and other people don't taste at all. And she had these small paper discs that had been treated with some kind of chemical. And she said, if you put this on your tongue and it tastes horrible, you're a super taster. If you put this on your tongue and you taste nothing, it means that you don't taste much. So everyone in the audience at the same time, including Anderson Cooper, put these paper discs on their tongue. And you could see the ripple. Some people were gagging. Other people were like, I got nothing here. And Anderson Cooper was one of those. He's like, I got nothing. I can't taste anything. And it was fascinating to me because I would have probably been one of those people who was gagging because food is so luscious to me. I've done a lot of healing around this, so I'm speaking to you about this with a sense of humor now. So much of my life memory is wrapped up in food. And when I read this tweet, it created this cascade of warm memories for me. There's a picture of my father and I. We're sitting outside. I'm sitting in his lap, and it's not an Etch-a-Sketch, but it's a form, I don't know, something similar to an Etch-a-Sketch. And I'm about 2.5 years old, I think, or 18 months, somewhere around there. And I'm holding Heinemann's onion roll. Now, if you're from the Chicago area, you will know of what I speak. It's this eggy, delicious roll that has some onions on the top. And that I can still taste that roll in that picture is crazy to me. I know how it felt in my hand. I know what it felt like when I took that bite into that eggy, oniony goodness. So, for me, food is a comfort. And I've been through a lot of experiences in the past few years, and I no longer engage with food that way, meaning I'm not indulging all the time in food in that way, but just, it's like how some people go to art museums, even though they can't paint. They go to art museums and they love the art. Or they watch people skydiving even though they're never going to go skydiving. I love reading about and looking at food even though I don't eat that way anymore. So this tweet brought this cascade of warm memories back to me. And there are probably a couple hundred replies that just cracked me up. And I'm going to just read a couple to you. I don't want to read all of them to you because I'll let you go and read them yourself. Another woman replies, "Yup, my grandmother, when giving a recipe, would use the Yiddish word for parsnip and in the same breath say, and then you add some Aunt Jemima." Someone else writes, "I'll never forget learning the secret to my mom's brisket was onion soup powder and some difficult to find Heinz chili sauce." And I just have to say, that is absolutely true. Our recipe for brisket was the Heinz chili sauce, which is sometimes where the ketchup is and sometimes where the barbecue sauce is, and is usually on the top shelf. And a packet of the powder of Lipton onion soup mix. It used to be Mrs. Grass French onion soup mix, but I don't think they make it anymore. And like a half a cup of brown sugar. That is the ancient brisket recipe in Jewish Americana cooking. And then they started talking about the cranberry chicken, which I am famous for my cranberry chicken, which is not really true. I just loved it. It's one of those memory dishes for me. And can I also say I'm so sorry to my vegan friends if the talk of this kind of cooking is disturbing. I'll move on to other food soon, okay, just so you know. But the cranberry chicken is a can of whole cranberry sauce, ocean spray, packet of the dried ingredients from Lipton onion soup mix, and half a bottle of Catalina dressing. You pour that over the chicken, and it is amazing. If you are really a chef, you may really be horrified by these dishes. This is just memory lane, right? This is the food of my people. This is my comfort food. And so this is to all of our grandmas and maybe grandpas, but I think mostly back in the 60s and the 70s, it was our grandmas, right, who learned how to cook things with, Dr. Pepper and grape jelly and onion soup mix and crushed pineapple and a can of tomato sauce, which really just must have delighted them because for the most part, these were women who had grown up having to make everything from scratch, right? That you could open a can of something must have just been wonderful. I have this other book I'll read to you that I found on Google Books at some point. It's about how to take care of your icebox, right? So in the early 1900s, was the invention of the ice box. And you would have an ice delivery several times a week or something like that. And I remember my grandmother would always call her refrigerator her ice box, because that's how she grew up, with an ice box, until actual refrigerators were invented, and how that created a sense of greater ease for housewives of the day. Again, I'm using sort of gender-specific language because back then it was really almost entirely left to the women to do the cooking back then. And I just have to say, I would have made a terrible housewife. I do not like domesticity at all. I'm all for prepared food or somebody else doing the cooking. I want everything already done. If I had to, again, here comes a ramble. Have you ever watched any of those PBS shows like Colonial House or Pioneer Living or something, where they make people go live in the old ways for a few months? I would last 5 minutes. I would get hungry and I would say to the camera person, "Give me your frickin' granola bar now." This will not do. I definitely chose my incarnation in this time and space so that I could live in a place with air conditioning and prepared food. So, just so you know, I may be very nurturing in my work. I am not nurturing as Laurel. Like when Laurel's on the clock, I put my feet up and I want easy breezy living. True confessions time. But hopefully you're asleep already and you're not hearing this part. Okay, so I'm going to get out one of the cookbooks that I purchased on eBay, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So here's something that's really cool. Clearly, you know the line of work I'm in, yes? I believe in miracles and serendipity and signs. So I'm always so delighted when they show up. So I found this book on eBay by searching for Jewish sisterhood recipes. And now that I'm giving that away, you all may shop that as well if you just so desire. And this book just called to me. I didn't really know why. It's called Culinary Treasures, and it's sponsored by the Temple Menorah Sisterhood. What I didn't know when I purchased it was that Temple Menorah was a synagogue in Chicago. Right? I'm like, of course it is. Now I'm like, of course it is. When I opened the book, the front page is inscribed by the woman who owned the book. Her name was Joyce Goldman. She has since passed away. I looked her up, so I was interested in who she was. And she lived maybe 5 miles away from where I grew up. So that's basically my neighborhood in a way. So she lived near us. She puts down her address and her phone number. And this was back when phone numbers started with 2 letters. So her phone number starts with BR4. I'm not going to give you the whole phone number. BR4. Ours started with Orchard 6, which was OR6. So that was so interesting to me. And the temple was near us as well, even though I had never heard of it. And there's 291 pages. This was published in 1954. And the other thing I want to mention is that each of the women who contributed to this is listed as Mrs. and then their husband's name. So, Mrs. Walter Siegel, Mrs. Mark Silverton, Mrs. Jerome Starr. I am so glad I was not a housewife of that era, because that wouldn't have not gone over big with me. I love my husband. I don't even think I ever use Mrs. as my address these days. I didn't get married until I was in my 40s, and I absolutely identify as his wife and he is my husband, but I don't know that I've even been addressed as Mrs. I don't know that I would know what to do with that. So it's just interesting how much things have changed since then. So that's how all of these women are listed. And the woman who owned this wrote notes. Isn't that wonderful when you find a cookbook and the woman has, or man, I don't mean to be gender specific here, but that the person has written notes, like if this recipe is good, or this one's terrible, or whatever that is. I find that interesting. And she also has newspaper clippings for other recipes in the pages, so this feels like a treasure trove. So let me find some good recipes to share with you. This one I thought was interesting. My Aunt Jane was a wonderful cook. She was my mom's sister. And my mom and her sister divided up the holidays. My Aunt Jane did Thanksgiving and one of the Passover Seders, and my mother did Hanukkah and the other Passover Seder. So the sisters split things up. And my Aunt Jane made this dish that she called carrot pudding. It was so decadent and delicious. There was nothing healthy about it. It's like that perception that carrot cake is healthy, just because there's carrots in it. There was nothing healthy about this carrot pudding, but it was awesome. And so I found in this book that there are a couple of recipes for carrot molds that I think must be akin to Aunt Jane's carrot pudding. I don't know the recipe for her carrot pudding, so I can't be sure. But this is the recipe for carrot mold. Oh, and you know what? This was brought forward by Ruth Starr. Ruth got to use her own name, which must mean she wasn't married. Because she's not Mrs. Somebody, she is just Ruth Starr. I don't mean just, you understand that. I'm sure Ruth Starr was, or maybe still is, an amazing woman in her own right. I just find it interesting that she is listed as her full name. But this is her carrot mold recipe. 1 cup of grated carrots, 1 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 cup of vegetable shortening, a pinch of salt, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 1/4 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda with lemon, and 1 egg. Combine above ingredients. Grease ring mold heavily with shortening and sprinkle with mozzarella. Bake 40 minutes in a 350-degree oven. So what's bad about that, right? You've got your shortening, you've got your carrots, you've got your brown sugar. Good food. Okay, it's not that this recipe sounds good to me, but I think it really reflects how women were cooking in this era. This is mushrooms and peas. 1 onion cut fine. 1 small box fresh mushrooms washed and chopped. 2 tablespoons of butter. 1 medium-sized can of peas. And 1/4 cup of sweet cream. Simmer onions and mushrooms in butter until onions are yellow. Add peas and sweet cream, heat well, and season to taste. And this is from Mrs. E.J. Levine. And we'll move into some of the desserts, because who doesn't love good dessert? This is a pineapple whipped cream torte. It starts with 1/4 pound of butter, a 1/2 cup of sugar, 4 egg yolks, 5 tablespoons of milk, 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You cream the butter and the sugar. Add egg yolks one at a time. Add remaining ingredients and divide into 2 pans with loose bottoms or scraper bottoms. Place mixture in the center and smooth around, leaving a 1-inch border around the edge. Then you take 4 egg whites, 1 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and half a cup of chopped nuts. You beat the egg whites, gradually adding sugar. Add vanilla, and when the mixture is stiff, divide into 2 and pile on pans, covering mixture completely to the edge of pan. Sprinkle nuts on top and bake at 350 degrees for 30 minutes or until the meringue is done. Remove from pans when cool and fill with half a pint of whipped cream and 1 small can of crushed pineapple drained. Do not fill with whipped cream mixture until 1 hour before serving. Be sure 1 meringue top is on the bottom of the platter and both bottoms of cake meet in the filling. That's from B. Mink. So again, B. Mink is using her own name. She's not a Mrs. somebody. We know her first name, which delights me. And this next recipe I'm reading to you because Mrs. Goldman has it tabbed. So this is, and her notes are on it, and I'll read you her notes. This is for apricot strudel. Who doesn't like a good apricot strudel, right? 1/2 pound of salted butter, 1 cup of sour cream, 2 cups sifted bread flour, 1 pound apricot preserves, 1 package of coconut, and 1 cup of chopped pecans. Soften butter, mix with sour cream and add flour. Beat until mixed, chill overnight. Divide in 5 parts and roll out as thin as possible to about 14 by 12. Combine apricot preserves with coconut and nuts. Divide to make 5 fillings for the above. Put filling in 1 straight line about 4 inches from the edge of roll and fold over loosely several times. Bake about 7 minutes in a 425-degree oven, then 350 degrees for 15 minutes. Slice diagonally while it is still warm. This is from Rose Cuthbert. Well, you know what? I think this means I have to amend my earlier assessment that all the women here were listed by their husbands' names. I will pull that back because somehow all of the recipes I have been guided to read to you, the women are using their own names. But it's interesting as I look through the book, so many of them are Mrs. husband names. So I'm going to amend what I said. But here is Mrs. Goldman's assessment of this recipe. She says, very flaky dough, 1/4 cup of cinnamon chips, and 1 tablespoon of butterscotch. So she must have been trying out her own version of this. She also said for another filling, 1 large apple or 2 small cut up, and you squeeze lemon on them. 1/2 a can of coconut. I didn't know if coconut came in a can then. And 1/2 a cup of cinnamon chips. I've never heard of cinnamon chips, so it sounds interesting. Okay, here's another one. Sour cream spice cake. And it makes 1 dozen medium cakes. 1 1/4 cups of flour, 1/2 a teaspoon of soda, 1/2 a teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of thick sour cream, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground cloves, 2 eggs, and 1 cup of brown sugar. Sift flour, soda, salt, and spices together. Beat eggs. Add sugar gradually, beating constantly. Add flour mixture alternately with sour cream. Beat well. Fill small greased muffin pans 2/3 full. Bake in moderate oven 375 degrees about 20 minutes. Can be frosted when cool. Mrs. Al Pomerantz. And this one sounds yummy. This is a chocolate peppermint roll. 1/3 of a cup of flour. 1/3 of a cup of Hershey's cocoa. 1 teaspoon baking powder. 1/4 teaspoons of salt. 4 egg whites. 1 cup of sugar. 4 egg yolks, 2 tablespoons of water, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Sift flour, cocoa, baking powder, and salt together. Beat egg whites until they stay in peaks but are not dry. Fold in 1/2 of the sugar. Add water to egg yolks. Beat until light. Add remaining sugar. Gradually beat until fluffy. Fold into beaten whites. Fold in sifted dry ingredients. Add vanilla. Pour into a shallow pan lined with heavy wax paper. Bake in moderate oven 15 to 20 minutes. When baked, turn out cake on paper or cloth sprinkled with powdered sugar. Remove waxed paper and trim off edges of cake. Roll up cake at once in a cloth or paper. When cool, unroll and spread with peppermint filling. Roll up again and store in refrigerator. Cut into slices to serve. Ruth Pomerantz. You know what's interesting? There's no recipe for the peppermint filling. I'll share with you something else about my lack of domesticity. I would never do this recipe because there's way too many ingredients and too many steps. So I love watching Great British Bake Off. Love that show. But I would never do anything that required that many steps. When I go through a recipe book, I look for something that has the fewest ingredients and the fewest steps, which is probably why the take a can of cranberry sauce, half a bottle of Catalina dressing, and a package of French onion soup mix is truly the extent of my culinary mastery. I'm going to find one more recipe, or maybe 2, I don't know, to share with you. I hope it's okay that I'm sharing sweets with you. I hope I'm not, Well, you know what? This is what they say, right? You'll have dreams of sugar plum fairies as you go to sleep. Because calories consumed in the astral realm do not count. So you feel free to indulge while you sleep in your dreams only, not in physical world reality. Okay, this is for lemon cheesecake pie. I don't know why I'm reading this one. I typically am not a lemon fan. I'm a chocolate girl, but it sounds like a good one to read, so here we go. And it's under the woman's own name. So I really am resisting the urge to go back and edit out what I just said about everybody being known as Mrs. So-and-so, because clearly I'm being proven wrong here as I go through the recipes, but I am not going to edit it out because the truth is many of you may have slept right through that comment. So it'll just be there. And I will just make my apologies for any sweeping generalization that I made about women in the late 50s from Temple Menorah. I take it back. So this is a lemon cheesecake pie. 3 3-ounce packages of cream cheese or 1 8-ounce package, 2 tablespoons of butter, half a cup of sugar, 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of flour, 2/3 of a cup of milk, a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, and 2 tablespoons of grated lemon peel. Cream cheese and butter, add sugar and egg, mix well. Add flour, milk, stir in lemon juice and peel. Pour into unbaked pie shell. Sprinkle with crumbs. Bake 35 minutes in a moderate oven of 350 degrees. Chill and serve. Top with sour cream. This is optional. For the graham cracker crust, you take 1 1/4 cups of fine graham cracker crumbs, half a cup of sugar, 1/3 of a cup of melted butter. Crush the graham crackers. Add sugar and melted butter. Mix well. Reserve a 1/4 cup of mixture for topping. Press remainder on the bottom and sides of an 8-inch pie plate and chill until set. And this comes from Georgiana Hollander. Okay, and I saw this one in the recipe index, and Mrs. Goldman put an arrow next to it. Golden yam balls. I love that name. So here, if you ever want to make golden yam balls, this is how you do it. A half a cup of ground Brazil nuts. A half a cup of brown sugar packed firm. 2 tablespoons of butter melted. 2 tablespoons of orange juice. A half a teaspoon of salt. And 2 cups of mashed sweet potatoes, about 1 1/2 pounds. And marshmallows, because everything is better with marshmallows. So you preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Combine nuts and sugar in a shallow pan and set it aside. Add melted butter, orange juice, and salt to mashed sweet potatoes and mix well. Place whole marshmallow in the center of a spoonful of potato mixture and roll so that marshmallow is in the center of the potato ball. This is delighting me. I can't even tell you why. Roll potato ball in a nut mixture until coated. Place in greased baking dish and bake at 350 degree oven for 15 minutes. And this was provided by Kate Rosenthal. Just so you know, I would never eat this now, so don't make this for me. But as a kid, this would have delighted me because I loved sweet potatoes. I loved marshmallows and the nuts. So to have this ball thing, and when you would bite into it and it would be warm, it would be gooey, this would have been a home run. Of course, the Laurel who I am now, I don't eat sugar. So again, don't make these for me. I would not eat these. But the part of me that appreciates food still, I love this recipe. And the last one I'm going to share with you, also kind of, the name at least sounds good, fried potato logs. I mean, who doesn't want a fried potato log? And listen, what's important to remember is in 1958, fast food wasn't a thing. You weren't eating French fries every day of the week. They weren't available like this. I don't even know that these are French fries, but the whole homage to potato thing, it's important to understand. In 1958, we were not ODing on French fries and potatoes of every kind. Okay, these aren't French fries, just so you know. I just figured that out. So fried potato logs. Take 2 cups of mashed potatoes. Leftover potatoes may be used, so it's okay. It's all right if you use leftovers. 1 tablespoon of butter. 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. 1 tablespoon of grated onion. 1 egg. 2 tablespoons of water. Half a teaspoon of salt. 1 egg yolk. And half a cup of fine breadcrumbs and shortening for frying. Mix cooled potatoes with 1 egg yolk and grated onion. Shape into rolls about 2.5 inches long and as thick as a finger. Coat with flour, then roll in diluted egg, and then in fine breadcrumbs. Slowly fry potato logs in shortening, turning to brown all over. Serve piping hot. Serves 4. From Mrs. Arthur Goldsmith. And so I want to really honor the women who contributed to this book and all of the cookbooks out there, right? The mothers and the grandmothers and the great-grandmothers of our generation who taught us about food through their lens, right? I think about my mom and my grandma. They had to make all the meals. I don't think in our house, again, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. We rarely ate out. It was a treat that we would go to Burger King, I think, maybe once a month, once every 2 months. I don't even know that McDonald's was really a thing with us back then. We were Burger King people. But we didn't eat out. My mom made every meal. God bless her heart. We had an occasional TV dinner, I think, which is going to be a podcast of all its own, right? Any TV dinner people from the early 70s. And for now, I hope that our conversation here tonight has brought forward some more memories for you. I don't know, there can be a real comfort in these kinds of memories. And that if you haven't already drifted off to sleep, that at least hopefully you're relaxed and you're resting. And the love from my heart to yours and across the generations of our lives is with you now. So, my beautiful beloved, you have a good rest. And the angels will stay with you. You are a blessing. You are loved, and I am grateful for you. We'll be together again soon. I love you.